Hi, I'm Keani Chloe, and welcome to the evening show with Ben Ferguson. It's April 1964, and Ben is welcoming to the show a pretty heavy cat, producer and director, Mr. Steve Binder. Now, ladies and gentlemen, welcome your host, Mr. Ben Ferguson.
Thank you all very much. Thank you all for coming. Like Keani had mentioned, I'm Ben Ferguson. I'll be your host. Welcome to 1964. As you can see, I'm smoking and I'm drinking because 60% of you out there still smoke cigarettes. As the Surgeon General has mentioned for the very first time in 1964 that smoking may be hazardous against your health. May not be. So anyway, later on I think he says you just go dig a hole, but right now it's just may be hazardous. Ladies and gentlemen, Cassius Clay, he changes his name to Muhammad Ali after he whoops Sonny Liston. He is the new heavyweight champion. A loaf of bread is 21 cents. A gallon of gas is 25 cents. The average American earns $5,880 a year. John Glenn just orbited around the Earth. St. Louis Cardinals just beat out the New York Yankees 4-3. Huh? Wow. Northern Dancer won the Kentucky Derby. Alaska just had what's going to be known to be as the Great Alaskan Earthquake 9.2. Coupled with a tsunami, yeah. Let's get into something a little nicer. 1964 is the Summer of Love. Summer of Love, America's favorite couple, Sonny and Cher, get married. Aw, isn't that nice? They want to have a baby, and the reporters asked them if they want to have a boy or a girl, and they both smiled and said yes. Ladies and gentlemen, the Ford Motor Company has just released its newest model, the Ford Mustang. The sticker price for a base model is $2,386. If you want the fully loaded one, it's about $3.25 more. I like that one. Anyway, I have some sad news. The Danny Thomas Show will be ending this year. After 11 long years, it's being wrapped up and canceled. They have 4 new shows that we hope does half as well. One's As the World Turns, the other one is Another World, Jeopardy, and Bewitched. We wish them all well. Ladies and gentlemen, the best movie for 1964 and the Academy Award goes to My Fair Lady with Julie Andrews. Touted as one of the very finest imaginative story ever told until September of 64 when the Warren Commission turned in their JFK assassination report. Come on, nothing for that? Another thing about 1964, 1964 is the absolute very most important year in the history of music for the century. January, Ed Sullivan introduces the Beatles to America. Huh? Yeah. Thank you. The summertime, some fellows by the name of the Rolling Stones debut their very first album. Not only that, they also debut on the Ed Sullivan Show in October. Now, sometime between January and October, there's a cat running around L.A. trying to get a film done. He wants to do a rockumentary. He wants to do a rock and roll film. He finally gets it together. He directs what's called The Tammy Show, the Teenage Music International, and that will be released December 29th, 1964. Therefore, wrapping up the world's best year in music, 1964. He does a lot more things. He has 3 giant TV specials. I'm getting told to wrap up. We're going to have Mr. Steve Binder out here in just a few minutes. We have the whole half an hour for him, and he's got a lot to tell us about. So that's coming up in just a minute. But right now, Mr. John Cantadella is going to bring us into the next segment.
I said, baby, here I am, I'm the man on the scene. I can give you what you want, but you gotta come home with me. I've got some good old loving and I got some more in store. When I get through throwing it on, you gotta come back for more. Poison things that come by the dozen, that ain't nothing but tensy loving. Hey, little thing, let me light your candle, cause mama, I'm sure hard to handle now you're surrounded.
Mr. John Cantadella of the Evening Show Band. He's the only member that showed up this evening. So thank you very much, John.
All right. Yeah.
And we have Keani.
Hi.
It's Keani, right?
Yes.
We have a floor director, her daughter named Keone.
Yes, she spells her name Keoni, and I spell my name Keani.
So Keoni County, and we have both Cameron, one's Baloney and one's Balani.
Really?
Yes, so we have Keoni County, Baloney,
Baloney and Balani, all right.
Yeah, so that didn't go anywhere. Anyway, listen, we really appreciate you coming here.
Thank you.
Just take it over for Dominique this time, and tell me, we were talking a little bit before you came out about Fiesta.
Yes.
Now, I told you that this is the very first year that I actually went to the courthouse and watched the dancing.
Yeah.
Because normally I see it on TV and I'm like, who in their right,
Who wants to go all the way
to
over
go?
there late at night?
Maybe it's a flat screen and it doesn't have a lot to do with the TV. But let me tell you, when I got there, I'll be there every year. I love it there.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
It's different. I mean, you think seeing it on TV is one thing,
Right.
but once you're actually there with your community and you see everyone that you grew up with or people from school, your neighbors.
Whole other deal, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a whole different experience.
And thank you for being 1964 with the rest of us.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, you look wonderful. We're going to have to run, but we are going to have you on a future show, maybe in a month or so, and you can come back.
Yes, of course. Sounds
Wonderful. Awfully nice meeting you.
Nice to meet you.
Ladies and gentlemen, Keoni.
Hi, and welcome. I'm Ari.
And I'm Danny.
And I'm so excited to announce the news that was just released yesterday that the Ben Ferguson Show will air by the end of this month. There have been rumors that the show wouldn't air until next year, but it's official. We are just 2 weeks away. The buzz is all over Santa Barbara. We are here to talk to the people and get their incredible, exciting reactions about the show.
Ferguson! I was just talking to my mom about it actually a few days ago. We're pretty excited. We're both gonna watch that actually. Ferguson!
Me gusta mucho Benjamín. ¿Cómo sale?
Ferguson! Oh yeah, super hyped up. Can't wait. Ferguson!
Yeah, I'm super excited. Will you be tuning in with us?
Yeah, I'm excited.
Ferguson!
Ma'am, it's the best.
People from across the globe, young and old, are going to tune into the Ben Ferguson Show right here. Tune in. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, as I mentioned before, our first and only guest tonight is the director of the Tammy Show, the Teenage Music International a rock and roll movie, which we're going to talk about in just a minute, and countless other TV specials. He's a director, he's a producer, he's done thousands of things, and he's continually doing them. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. Steve Bender. Come on over, Steve. Thank you very much for being here. Steve, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Ben.
Yeah, I want to thank you for coming by here. I know you're a busy man these days, and we're going to get more into that in just a minute. Let's go, I've read all about you. I feel like I've known you for a long time now. Let's go back to 1964. Let's go back here. You went to school at the UCLA?
No, I actually went to USC. Which,
USC, what did I say?
exactly.
UCLA? Well, I was close. Yeah, I feel like I know you, Steve. Little inside joke.
I'm going to throw you a real curve.
Oh, good.
I actually root for UCLA when it comes to sports a lot.
Well, maybe that's what made me do that 3 takes to get to where we are now.
But I actually have taught at aside from going to USC as an undergraduate, I've taught a directing course at USC Cinema School for 25, 30 years.
Wow, nice. You ended up at KABC a few weeks later and ended up in the mailroom, is that correct?
I actually was in pre-med, got drafted during the Korean War, went to Austria and Germany, and I served with Nick Clooney's dad, Nick Clooney.
Wow.
And in Germany. And then I came home and decided to go back to college. A friend of mine who had graduated high school was in my high school club, Ed Milkus, became an assistant editor on Star Trek at Paramount. And I told him I was off for the summer waiting to go back to college, and he said, I've got a great idea. Why don't you get a job at one of the studios, and you can meet a lot of pretty girls walking around the lot.
Makes sense. Now that was
Made sense to me.
That was 1964, right? I read that Star Trek started in 1960.
No, it was before, actually. It was because I think it was around 1961, actually.
Wow.
And it was a situation where I took his advice. I applied for work. They were looking for a clerk typist at CBS in Hollywood. I think I was excelling at about 30 words a minute. They were looking for 100 words a minute.
Right.
And then I applied at ABC, and they said they had a job in the mailroom. But I had to promise I wanted to do nothing more in life than to deliver mail for KABC
That was your life
on the lot,
ambition.
or I had to swear on a Bible.
Right.
And I learned the technique of fibbing,
Right.
and that helped quite a
Or
bit.
acting, as
I
they
got
may
the
say.
job. Right.
Good.
And I lasted there about 2 or 3 weeks, and an amazing thing happened in life, which is I was introduced delivering mail to the program director of KBC, Seligman. And he said, "Have you ever directed before?" And I said, "No." And he said, "Would you be interested?" And I said, I have nothing to lose. Sure, I'd be interested.
Right.
Well, I want to introduce you to a gentleman named Norman Abbott. He was, I think, the nephew of the comedy team of Abbott and Costello.
Okay.
And he was directing at KABC at the time, and was leaving to go to CBS to direct a Jack Benny comedy show and a Bing Crosby's brother, who was a musician, and he had a television show at CBS. And we need a quick replacement, and we don't have anybody lined up. So why don't you go meet Norman, see how it works out, and maybe you could take this job in the summer, and then you could go back to the mailroom or whatever.
Sure.
After that.
It seemed to work out for you, though.
Sounded pretty good, right? So I went there, and when I walked into a control booth like you have here, it was a foreign language. I didn't know
Right.
what they were saying. Set up, dissolve, ready, take, all that language,
Right.
showbiz language. And I walked in control booth and didn't know what I was doing there. And I think by the end of the day, I knew the job better than Norman, who was teaching me how to be a director. And I was watching him direct and just felt this is something that
You'd like to do.
felt natural.
Yeah.
And so, believe it or not, I became a full-fledged KABC director, directing Soupy Sales, a pie-throwing
Soupy Sales.
series that was on KABC at the
Didn't
time.
you say that you mentioned, we talked earlier, that the stars, they called you and they wanted to be hit with pies?
And I got a call, first person call
Frank
from
Sinatra?
Frank Sinatra.
Yeah.
That's right. And when we went on the network with the show, because it was so successful
Right.
as a local show during the day, Frank Sinatra was our first guest. And our pies actually were really not real pies.
Whipped cream on
No,
plates?
shaving cream.
Shaving cream.
Shaving
Okay.
cream and paper plates.
Yeah.
And then a gunshot when we threw it at somebody, so when they hit,
Made
it
some
would have
noise.
that kind of an
Yeah, I
impact.
like that.
And anyway, after the third week of the network show, I got a call saying, "We have a problem." And I said, "What's the problem?" And they said, the network program director, who you've never met, was very upset because a local television director was directing his network show. So they want you to continue on with Soupy during the day, 5 days a week, but we're bringing in a heavyweight network director to do the primetime show. And I had just done the show with Sinatra and Tony Curtis and Mickey Rooney,
Wow.
and then I'm out of a job
Right.
on the network.
How was working with Soupy? Was he a good guy?
Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I bet he was.
And I mean, there were a lot of laughs on
Yeah,
the set, which
sure.
I've always loved. I mean,
Yeah.
I love comedy. Anyway, make the long story short, I quit. I said, I'm going back to school.
Man.
So I left, and ironically, the director who replaced me, Bob Henry, called me saying, I have a problem. I didn't know him or anything, and he called and he said, I have a problem. How do you direct Soupy Sales? So I had to explain to him how the show worked. And but I left, and literally within days, I got a telephone call from my Soupy Sales stage manager, who said that he was also working with Steve Allen, who was a hero of
On
mine.
his talk show.
And he said, Steve is doing a jazz series. Would you be interested in directing it at CBS? And so I directed 26 half hours called Jazz Scene USA with Oscar Brown Jr. hosting. And just about 26 of the greatest jazz artists in the world at that time, Bill Evans, Stan Kenton, Big Band, Nancy
I want to mention
Wilson.
real quick, Stan Kenton. And I have to mention, because the other day, Alistair Green came, and for Stan Kenton's top trumpet player was Chico Rivera. Chico Rivera's great-grandson is
Named
Alistair
after the
Green.
city, right?
Maybe so, I don't know. Yeah. But his grandson was here the other day, and he plays lead guitar for the Alan Parsons Project. So it's kind of fun when I heard that. Yeah, it's kind of a tight little circle. Anyway, I'm sorry, go ahead.
So in the middle of shooting Soupy, in the middle of shooting Jazz Scene,
Right.
Soupy's long gone by then.
Okay, no, I gotcha.
Right, at least by a month.
Right.
And I got a call from Steve Allen himself, and I'd never met Steve, and
Wow.
he said, "You're doing a wonderful job on my show. I've just signed a contract with Westinghouse to do a 5-night-a-week show for 90 minutes a night."
Was that the Tonight Show?
It was the Steve Allen.
The beginning of it.
No, the Tonight Show was a franchise of NBC. This
Okay.
was syndicated. And we were on Vine Street in Hollywood, across from the Hollywood Ranch Market
Hollywood
that no
and
longer
Vine.
exists. And I want you to direct my show as well. And I said, "I can't." He said, "What do you mean you can't?" I said, "Well, I'm doing the jazz show." And he said, "You'll do both." And I said, "I'm not sure I can." He said, "Well, start it and I'll replace you if it's too much for you to be doing." And luckily, Cecil Smith, the critic at the time of the LA Times in television, wrote this amazing article. I couldn't believe it when I saw it, but it had my picture in it, and it said, "Who has the best job in town?" And wrote this whole article of my doing the jazz show and the Steve Allen show. And that
So your name was
lasted-
out.
That lasted for 2 years. I was
Wow.
actually the director of Steve for a couple of years.
Now, if we fast forward, how did you get involved with the Tammy Show?
While I was directing Steve Allen, I was approached by a madman, but a really great genius type madman named Bill Sargent.
Mm-hmm.
And he brought in, at that time, 2 partners. And they asked me to produce and direct with no ground rules. I could create my own show. 1964 was the passage of the Civil Rights Act. And as a result, they had gone to the NAACP, National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, and pitched them a theater version, a movie version of a tribute to the passage of the Civil Rights Act. And they wanted to put 2 hours in arenas all across the United States. So I was given the task to do 1 of those hours on the West Coast. Another producer, Bob Banner, Solid Gold, et cetera, he's
Right.
a really good producer, was given the East Coast. And then they were going to slap the 2 shows together in
Wow.
a 2-hour version and play it in arenas. And not knowing what I was doing and having no cast, I ended up with, in that particular Electronovision show, Burt Lancaster, first Bill Cosby appearance, Edward G. Robinson, Gene Kelly,
The list goes
Barbara
on.
McNair, Cannonball Adderley, and I put this amazing cast together.
Wow.
I still am kind of wondering how I did it at that time.
You know what,
I actually met Burt Lancaster by just calling the phone number at the studio and saying I want Burt Lancaster's office, and he answered the phone.
That's after your name in the newspaper's out, everybody's getting to know you about that
But
time.
nobody knew me
Oh.
really, and I
Right.
just would introduce myself as the guy doing the Steve Allen show.
Sure. Listen, Steve, they're calling. We're going to have a break, and I want to hear all about this because we're getting right to the meat of things. But we have John Cantadella. He has planned a song just for you for the 1964, and we're going to have him play it. We're going to come right back.
Great.
Ladies and gentlemen, John Cantadella.
Went down to Louisiana, down to New Orleans, way back up in the woods among the evergreens. Stood a log cabin made of earth and wood. There lived a country boy named Johnny B. Good, who never ever learned to read or write so well, but he can play the guitar like it's ringing a bell. Go, 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 Johnny, go, 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 Johnny, go, 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 Johnny, go, go. Go, go. Johnny be good. His mama said someday you'll be a man, and you will be the leader of a big old band. Many people coming from miles around will hear playing music when the sun goes down. Maybe someday his name will be in lights saying Johnny be good tonight.
That was for you. Yay.
No, that was a great guitar playing.
Yeah,
That's what it was
good,
for.
good. I'm glad. We were talking Burt Lancaster, I think we had finished up with.
Yeah, I finished shooting that
Uh-huh.
film, and then I was approached by Bill Sargent, again, asking if I wanted to get involved in doing and directing a rock and roll film.
Right.
And once he said the magic name, Jack Nietzsche, who was the musical director.
Jack Nietzsche.
Jack Nietzsche and Phil Spector were the two geniuses
Spector.
of rock and roll
Right.
in the 60s.
Did you work with Phil Spector? You must have at some point. Worked
Many
with Phil Spector.
times
Yeah,
I
yeah,
worked with
yeah.
Phil.
Did
I
you
even
actually?
starred Phil with the actor Sal Mineo in a pilot that I did, which aired on ABC with the Dave Clark Five.
Is that right? Did you choose any of the music acts for that film, the Tammy Show?
I was involved with a few who were in my management
Right.
stable at the time.
And didn't we
Janet
talk-
Dean, who hosted it,
Okay.
and the two terrific songwriters who were going to Fairfax High School in Los Angeles at the time. We used to hang out at our offices. Steve Barry and P.F. Sloan wrote They're Coming From All Over the World, which became the theme of the Tammy Show film.
Didn't we talked about 90% of the participants in that movie are like Hall of Famers?
I think there were about 9 of them.
Yeah.
And at the time, I mean, I didn't even know half the acts,
Right.
what they even looked like.
Well, the Rolling Stones were absolutely brand new, weren't they? Their first
were-
album came out?
Yeah, the biggest star of the Tammy Show was Leslie Gore at the time.
Wow, she's the
And,
least known one now, isn't she?
And it's pretty amazing that Jack Nietzsche had a lot to do with actually choosing a lot of the artists that appeared on
That's
the show.
pretty amazing.
There were packages. I mean, there was the Motown package with Smokey and
Right, right.
And interestingly enough, that everybody was so young and fresh that they hadn't even emerged as, Diana Ross and the Supremes or Mick Jagger and the Rolling Stones. They were just groups at the time.
Right. And they were happy to
or
be involved,
individuals.
I'm sure.
Well, it was the first time
Yeah.
anybody was making a real motion picture instead of a TV show.
I have some pictures I was just going to go through with you. Now, this is one of my favorites. You got the camera here? Now, this is Steve Bender as the director. Isn't this cool?
All right.
This is pretty nice. Now, you
Ought to
mentioned
be young again.
to be young again. Well, you got another 20 years where I was
Right.
left in you. Smokey Robinson. Now, this is from the Tammy Show,
That's
correct?
from the Tammy Show.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we have the infamous James Brown. Now, I watched a little bit on YouTube of James Brown. He traveled from one end of the stage to the other on one ankle. Now, was it something else watching him? Was he a big name back then, or
James.
he blew me away when I watched that?
Well, he was the greatest. I mean, without it being stated, James was on that stage with all the artists, the biggest star, and everybody was anticipating him being there. Now,
Yeah.
I had never, I'd listened to his records when I was prepping the film,
Right.
but I'd never known, because in those days, in the 60s, and again, civil rights,
Right.
white artists, the white population didn't know what the black artists basically looked.
This movie brought
looked
everybody
like.
together
It
and
became a
introduced.
real family, and
And speaking of which, we have Marvin Gaye and you, and that was probably part of the whole idea of the Tammy
Marvin
Show.
became a good friend, and I worked with him on
Wow.
a couple other shows. Real tragedy that he
Yeah.
passed away. But
Big
Marvin was a real genius. I mean,
Yeah.
and his
Well,
not so
the-
much what Motown molded him to be, but what he wanted to do on his own.
The fact that you got to work with these people, though, really, really neat to make friends with these
I've
people.
been blessed by the artists that I have had the opportunity to work
Yeah.
with, and
This is my favorite, this next one. Now, this was the 68 comeback special, is that correct?
right.
And this is the set that you designed with the 100 Elvis impersonators.
I had way too many,
Right.
actually. And
Yeah.
in those
Yeah,
days.
100's a good amount.
Yeah, but in those days, the toughest job I had, not as a director but as a producer, is hiring somebody and finding out they weren't working out, so you had to fire them. So I
Right.
didn't fire anybody in those days. And our art director, Gene McAvoy, on the Presley Comeback Special, built this amazing structure to hold all these bodies.
Right.
And I wanted them dressed and holding guitars and looking like Elvis.
Sure.
And too many guys were hired, so I had to shove 2 and 3 into a box when it would have been much better look and a lot cleaner if I reshot it and just had one in each box and so forth.
You know, I want to bring up I want to bring out the book in just a minute because I have to do that because I read the book.
But we also should talk about the Tammy Show being, it's going to be shown on.
That was my next thing. It's
okay,
it's coming to
sorry to
Carpinteria. In
preempt you.
fact,
Yeah,
that's
that's
okay.
right.
No, that's not a
Okay.
problem. Just to prove that I was going to talk about that. Amy, come on out here. There's Amy. So Amy has a poster at the Tammy Show, August 23rd, 7:15, and Steve, you will be there and answer questions and sign
I will
autographs.
definitely be there, yes.
Yeah, I think it only holds 200 people, that whole theater, so.
Anything for live theater, I love it.
Yeah. It'll be nice. Listen, it's been a pleasure talking with you. Do we have any more time left? I want to show his book real quick. Show me a camera. I read this book. You don't even have to be an Elvis fan, but everybody's an Elvis fan. This was the most amazing read that I have ever had.
Thank you.
Yeah, you go to, in 1968, you go to Elvis when everybody's telling him yes, right? And you're the only person that tells him no, your career's in the toilet. Those are your exact words, right?
I did say that to him.
That was the point, I think, that he gained your trust, and you guys had a friendship that was just phenomenal.
It was a short window, unfortunately.
Right.
But it was a really good one, and I really loved working with him.
Right. Yeah, some of the stories, the story about the Christmas song that you guys wrote.
No, what happened was the Colonel had made a deal with NBC.
First of all, didn't care for the Colonel too much. But go ahead.
Anyway, the Colonel had made a deal with NBC, but Tom Parker, his manager, didn't bother to tell Elvis. So when Elvis heard about the television special, and he didn't want to do it. So the executive producer, Bob Finkel, called me. I just finished a Petula Clark, Harry Belafonte special. There was a lot of controversy around it. And asked if I would be interested because he felt that Elvis and I would, we were around the same age. We both were into music, and he just felt we'd be compatible. And it's all in the book.
Yeah, you're more than
so,
compatible.
yeah,
It's just an amazing story. Will you have these at the event on the 23rd?
I'll definitely bring them.
Okay, you guys need to come and buy this book and read it. Steve Bender, thank you very much for
Thank you,
showing
Ben.
up. Yes.
Yes.
Remember, guys, the Plaza Playhouse Theater, August 23rd, 7:15. We'll see all of you there. Thank you very much.
Way down in Louisiana, down in New Orleans, way back up in the woods among the evergreens, stood a log cabin made of wood and wood. There lived a country boy named